like to invite Jamie Court, representing Consumer Watchdog. Welcome, Mr. Court.
Thank you. I've got some slides for you to make it a little more interesting. I appreciate you taking the time to look in this matter and you inviting me to talk about it. I've been looking at gas prices since the year 2000 when Antonio Villaraigosa, who was speaker, asked me to represent the Assembly on Bill Lockyer's gas pricing task force. I knew nothing about gas prices, so I've gotten up to speed over the years and been asked to comment on them. This first slide, the next...
Just quick comment, the members should have this, the slides in their package.
Can I, how do I just denote I want to go to the next? Yeah, go next slide, thanks.
Are you control? So you just need to...
Next, thanks. Well, this is the difference in gas prices from the EIA, the Department of Energy, and you'll see we're at $1.26 more right now than the U.S. And only about 60 cents of that is justified by environmental costs and taxes. And I just wanted to point out in the chart that you received previously how this all breaks down. The chart says $1.28 a gallon. Taxes were added, environmental rules. Well, federal taxes are paid by everyone, and there are state taxes that are paid by everyone. And if you take out the federal taxes that are paid by everyone and the 34-cent average state tax that's paid in the United States, you come up to more of a difference of about 64 cents between the U.S. price of gas and the California price of gas. So that's when we talk about the difference. Where is the extra 40, 50, 60 cents going? The gas prices fluctuate between $1.20, $1.30 more. They've been as high as $1.50 more in the last 2 months. And it's not explainable by taxes or environmental rules. If you can go to the next slide, please. We can explain it, however, through consolidation. 5 oil refiners control 96% of this gasoline made in the state. 5 refiners make 96% of the gasoline. It's actually 97% now because of the Marathon refinery coming offline. Those refiners are Marathon, Chevron, PBF, Phillips 66, and Valero. And a lot of the problems that I've witnessed in the last 20-some-odd years, I've been watching this industry, come from consolidation. The mystery surcharge is one permutation of this. But it is the fact that we have such a consolidated industry and the refiners work together. And they work together in a way that maintains very high profits. If you go to the next slide, please. This is their total profits in the second quarter of 2022. So we're talking about April, May, and June. Their profits were $26 billion. That's $14 billion increase. Now, this is total profits. It involves all their operations. But this is right out of their best investor report. They increased their profits. They doubled their profits in the second quarter. And 2/3 of that, where that came from, was from the refining operations, increases in refining profits. Next, please. We have information about these refining profits because the investors report quarterly their refining margins by the barrel, and they report them by region, by Western region and the rest of the country and the rest of the world. What a refining margin is it is the difference between the cost of the crude oil going into a refinery, the crude and other inputs, and the value of the gasoline that is sold at the refinery gate to the gas station owners or whoever. The difference is what you make per barrel. That is called the refining margin. It is the purest expression of what profitability is in this industry. And as you can see, in the Western region in the second quarter, the profits were through the roof, $42 a barrel, as opposed to $13 a barrel last year, $9 a barrel in 2020. And in the first quarter of 2021, you see it was only $6 a barrel. Next, please. You also can see that the profitability, refining profits, refining margins, are greatest in the West from all the other regions of the country and the world. They are highest here. The profits are higher here. That's why gas prices are higher here, because the profits are higher here. Now, next slide. I break it down even further because we're 42 gallons in every barrel. So if you do that math, you can actually figure out what the profits are on a gallon of gas. Marathon made over $1 a gallon on every gallon it refined in the West. Now, this is the West. This isn't California. Remember, their profits are higher in California. Their prices are higher in California. The refining margin, if we knew California margins, would be greater, likely greater. And if you can see, the profits per gallon are, 3, 4 times, some cases 5 times what they are in previous years. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see they're greater not only in previous years, but also everywhere else in the country. They're greater in California. These are numbers right out of the investor reports. They make the case for Californians paying more at the pump simply because refiners are making more at the pump. And they're doing it through their consolidation on the market. They're able to squeeze us. So what are our solutions? Next slide, please. The one pending solution we have right now is SB 1322 by Senator Allen. This is a small step in the right direction. It forces all California oil refiners to report their California refining margins on a monthly basis so we can track this in real time. And we can understand when there are these periods of excess profits, and then we can respond as policymakers, as the public. Sunshine is the best disinfectant, but it also helps to have a committee looking into the problem. So that is the first step. There are other solutions that have been previously discussed that I want to comment on briefly. One is creating a unified clean burning fuel standard for the West Coast of California. Actually, before we go back, before we get off the refining profits, I do want to say something about, if we can go back one slide, please. I do want to say something about why these profits are so high, in my view. Crude oil costs are variable. In other words, when the world price of crude oil goes up, the price of gasoline goes up. We see that at the pump all the time. But the refiners who are refining crude oil into gasoline are not paying the world price of crude oil. We don't actually know what refiners are paying for their crude oil. The CEC does not know what refiners are paying for crude oil. When the CEC, the California Energy Commission, calculates its margins, it is using the world price of crude oil and deducting it from the wholesale price of gasoline. But the way that refiners have made so much money these quarters, these are unprecedented profits. The way they've made it is they've had long-term contracts for crude oil, and they are paying a lot less than the world price of crude oil. The world price of crude oil went up really quickly. But they were having contracts for crude oil at a much cheaper cost. And yet, the speculative market drove the price of gasoline up. That's how you get these type of dollar per gallon profits. So we need to know, next slide, please, not only their refining margins, their gross margins and their net margins, which is what Senate Bill 1322 does, but also we want to know what the price of crude oil they're paying is, the average price of crude oil by month. Because if we understood that, we'd understand their costs a lot better. But we don't understand it. The CEC doesn't understand it. No one in California understands it but the refiners. Moving on to some of the solutions besides SB 1322. Previously discussed solutions that have some merit, I just want to talk about them. One is creating a unified clean burning fuel standard for the entire West Coast. A lot of people feel that would make the West Coast supply more fungible, and that would allow us to import fuel when a refinery is down in California, and it wouldn't have to be made specifically for California. It takes about 3 weeks to retool a refinery. That does happen, but it's a big turnaround time. So people think, why not create one West Coast refining blend, make it clean as possible, and we make it fungible. I think that has got some merit, but it also would require cooperation of other states, and it would also, it would also test this cartel we have of these 5 refiners that control 97% of the gas, and I'm not sure that's something that can be broke, but I think it's something that's worth thinking about. There's also an idea that we would create a refining supply of California CARB gasoline that's just there for when the market's short, and you can refill the gas like we have a U.S. petroleum reserve. This one's a little bit more difficult to do logistically because we don't have storage capacity to actually hold gas in California. We hold it in the pipelines. The pipelines are full. We hold it at terminals. There is not really a place to do this. So I think that has been talked about, and it logistically is very difficult. But I do think the market conditions demand new oversight. And we need to figure an option besides the California Energy Commission. The Energy Commission does report information. I think it needs to get better information and report more information, but it is not oversight. It is not a regulator in the sense that it's not able to act or even make a judgment to act in a period where something may be going wrong. Then it would make a referral to the AG. We need someone in the state, maybe in the Attorney General's office, maybe report directly to the governor, with the ability to have subpoena power, to get the type of information that I'm talking about on profitability, and to look at companies, the ways companies work together. Because that's the real problem here. We have companies who are working together, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but when they work together in ways that share information that's dangerous, that the market doesn't have, they need to be prosecuted. The other 2 recommendations I have for this committee, one is an excess profits law. If we're seeing these types of profits, $1 or more a gallon, there's no reason that those oil refiners should be able to keep that type of money when the state is having to give $1,000 back to its residents because they're paying too much for gas. So an excess profits law would just set a reasonable rate for profits and deter excess profitability, and hopefully we won't have to implement it. But if we would take the money back and give it back to the people. You could also do an update to the price gouging laws. Our price gouging laws now are only in effect when there's a state of emergency. In a state of emergency, if prices rise above a certain amount, and they're often local laws and they differ, then you can prosecute. Well, we could have a law that says when the price of gas goes over a certain amount and it's not justified by the cost, regardless of whether there's a state emergency, that would constitute price gouging. And by the way, if we had that law, we could certainly do that with this last 3 months, because the last 3 months, the price of gas skyrocketed, their profits skyrocketed, and there's nothing we can do about it. The last suggestion I have is an update to antitrust laws. And this goes to the ways that refiners work together. And it goes to your question about the mystery surcharge and the unbranded versus branded issue. The way that gas pricing is set, in my view of it, is the refineries have the gas and they sell it through a branded contract to the stations they have branded contracts with. Now that's about 2/3 of the stations. Those 5 refiners have branded contracts with about 66% of the stations. The rest are unbranded or something called the hypermarket, which is Walmart and Costco. When they set those prices for the branded stations, they have been setting them 30 or 40 cents higher than the price of gas that they sell to the unbranded stations, and it is the very same gas. It's sold at the same terminal. It's the very same gas. What happened in the wake of the Exxon refinery downage in 2015 was when we started to see the first dollar over U.S. prices, and it went up to $1.50 at one point, and it's been sustained between $1 and $1.50 ever since. And when the refinery went down, it was natural for the price to go up because there wasn't enough supply, or there was a perception there wasn't enough supply. But after a while, it became apparent that the oil refiners couldn't just keep supply out to keep their prices higher. So they developed this strategy. This strategy was not in effect before 2015, of charging their branded stations 30 to 40 cents more for the very same gas they charge the unbranded stations for. And they do it because if they charge their stations 30 to 40 cents more, and the stations have to pass on that cost to consumers to recoup their costs, they're making 30 to 40 cents more per gallon. That strategy has been in effect from 2015 till, I would say, the beginning of this year. I am not certain it's still in effect, looking at branded versus unbranded station prices in the last 3 weeks. I think it may have changed. But that was a strategy the companies used. How do they all do that at the same time? In other words, before 2015, branded stations paid 3 cents more than unbranded stations. And then all of them at the same time had this strategy of raising the prices to their unbranded stations. How does that happen? They work together. There is an antitrust case in San Diego, which I will share with the committee, called the Persian Gulf case. And they have literally dozens of communiques between traders of companies sharing information that's not public to the market about supplies being down, about one refiner filling another refiner's supply. They work to keep competition out of this market. They cheat rather than compete. And that is the fundamental part of the problem. And we need to have new laws that prevent that type of sharing of information. They shouldn't be able to share the price, for instance, that they charge the stations on every corner. And they do have this information shared among the refiners through this detailed Lundberg survey of every gas station on every corner and what it's paying for gasoline. When they have that type of information, it's very easy for the 5 refiners to keep the prices in the same pattern and make as much profit as possible. So we need to stop the sharing of information. That's going to require an update to antitrust laws. In any case, I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And I feel like I don't need to say this to the committee, but I need to say it, that people are really hard-pressed to choose now between filling up a tank of gas and paying their rent, paying their mortgage. And when that's happening at $6 a gallon, and we see Marathon making $1 a gallon, something's really wrong. Something's really, really wrong. This isn't just any industry. This is an industry that people depend on to get from place to place, and it's an industry that underlies all other industries and is a real major driver of inflation. And we need to look at enforcing some new laws on it to make sure that people aren't getting ripped off. And this was a complete ripoff. This whole situation where the Ukrainian situation was an opportunity, and the oil refiners took it to make a lot of money, and they got away with it. We don't want them to get away with it next time.
Thank you. Assemblymember Davies had a question.
Sure.
And thank you, and I apologize because I'm going to have to ask this question and then leave. I've got to catch a flight, so I want to thank everyone for coming. Just looking at your different solutions you had, just a question on the excess profit law. Obviously, if we've got a windfall tax coming in, I'm just curious, like anything, when we go ahead and we put taxes on corporations and so forth, technically, usually it comes back down to the consumer. How does this benefit the gas price and the consumer?
Well, if we're saying that 30 cents a gallon is the maximum profit, just taking that you can make it a refinery and you make 80 cents, they can't charge us more because we're looking at their margins and we're understanding that's the maximum profit. The British government actually implemented an excess profits tax recently in response to Shell's refining reports, and they implemented an excess profits tax. So it can't initially fall back on the consumer. What the industry would say, of course, is, well, that's going to discourage new refineries. That's going to, if we can only make 30 cents, not $1, why would we want to be in the refining business? But we can prevent it from directly boomeranging by simply setting a reasonable standard, 50 cents a gallon.
50 cents a gallon.
I'm just saying, 50 cents a gallon, is that a reasonable, as a percentage of the overall price of gasoline? Whatever it is, if we set an excess profits tax on the fact that the companies are making, well, like when their profits basically doubled in this fourth quarter, but more granularly to focus on what they're making out of what we're paying for it. So if it's 50 cents per gallon or whatever that translates to barrel, and we take a percentage of that back, that discourages this type of big increases in cost.
It discourages it, but it wouldn't stop it, correct?
I think it will stop it in the short term. I mean, I think it will stop it. We won't have the run-up, and the oil industry will say is, well, that'll discourage new refineries from being built. Well, the refiners have it pretty well. If they can make 50 cents a gallon, I think they'll have and they have all these cars to feed in California. I think they'll stay in California and keep making gasoline. I don't think they need to make $1 a gallon.
I appreciate it, and thank you so much. I apologize. I've got to go. Thank you.
I appreciate you delaying your flight.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you. Assemblymember Marisucci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Court. I think I called you Mr. McCourt earlier, and so I apologize.
And I appreciate that correction because it often never gets corrected and it happens all the time. So thank you.
All right. So I had to leave early at the last hearing of the Select Committee, and so did you testify at the last hearing? Okay.
I did not testify.
Okay. And so I did catch the portion of the last hearing where Professor Sev Borenstein from UC Berkeley testified, and he showed us this chart. It's probably you probably can't see it, but the important part of this chart is that it shows a jump in 2015 after the Torrance refinery fire in my district happened in February 2015, and how the price never dropped back down to where it was before that. And so, I wish I had remembered this chart when I was, with our prior two witnesses, but this doesn't seem to be explained by taxes and environmental fees. I mean, there wasn't a dramatic increase in taxes and environmental fees in 2015. That doesn't explain. Does it explain this?
No,
jump?
I mean there were. To be fair, the low carbon fuel standard increased, but again, if you do the breakdown, I think it's 44 cents between the low carbon fuels standard and the cap and trade credit. That was up, but it's 40 cents, and you add the 20 cents more in state taxes. It comes out to 60 some odd cents, maybe 70 cents, and that's all you can explain in taxes and environmental rules.
Okay. So yes, I look forward to Senator Allen's SB 1322 moving forward in the legislature in the next remaining 2 weeks.
You will have a chance to vote on it because it is on the assembly floor, so we appreciate that.
Thank you. But I'm also reminded of comments made by Professor Borenstein, where he warned this committee not to focus on oil profits. He said that oil companies making record profits, it's like looking at California's housing market. That people are making record profits because the demand is so high and the supply is restricted, and he also gave a warning that the last time, I know you're not talking about price controls, but he gave a cautionary tale about price controls in the early 1970s with the oil crisis leading to the disastrous outcomes of huge gas lines. I suspect you differ from Professor Borenstein on this.
I do. I have come to respect him, though, because we were on opposite sides. He was on the 2000 gas pricing task force too, total free market. But by 2015, actually after 2015, in 2020, he was the chair of the Petroleum Market Advisory Committee, and we convinced him that there was this difference between branded and unbranded stations because basically we got what's called rack pricing. You can get the cost that the refiners sell the gas at what's called the rack or a dealer tank wagon. It's the two ways. And the rack has a branded price and unbranded price. And we found this price difference at the rack and brought it to the committee and said, this is historically unprecedented. What's going on? And he took that seriously and basically said, yeah, and I believe in free markets. And boy, does he believe in free markets. But this is still crazy. This is out of whack. So the mystery surcharge, he was his term for a phenomenon that we brought to their attention. But I disagree. I think that gasoline is something that, number one, we do as a state want to get away from it. We want to get away from gasoline, and I think we can, and we are going to. But number two, it is, until we get away from it, something that is a necessity of life, and it's a driver of inflation. The more gasoline goes up, the higher the cost of all goods and services. We have to find a way to keep it within reasonable bounds, and I think $1 a gallon is outrageously unreasonable. And Severin would say, look, if the oil, and he has said this to me, look, if the oil companies made a good bet on a long-term contract and got their crude oil at $50 a barrel, and it was selling for $50 a barrel at one point, not that long ago, and they got them at $50 a barrel, and they can charge the equivalent of $110 a barrel, God bless them. They made a good bet. They made the hedge. They should make that money. And I said, well, what about the guy who can't get to work and has to quit his job because it's $6 a gallon? And that's where you guys come in, because you're the arbiter between the market and the consumer. And I think there needs to be a reasonable limit set. But to say that the oil companies didn't have a good year because of Ukraine and Putin just flies in the face of the facts. And the facts are their own investor reports.
In terms of their investor reports showing the record profits?
Showing the record profits and showing exactly where it came from. I mean, we can pinpoint the fact that the West Coast, and obviously more specifically California, has been an ATM for them for a long time. But now it's become like a 401k. I mean, it is, and if we don't put some limits on it, if we don't expose it, it will happen again.
So you're referring to what I 1, 2, 3, 4, your fifth chart that shows the differences in the refining margins between the West Coast versus East,
but to be truthful, the refining margins are crazy throughout the rest of the country, but they're still greater in California, in the West. Mm-hmm. And if you did California, they'd be even greater here. Mm-hmm. And I honestly believe that one of the reasons is the oil companies like to punish us, to hold us out an example for our environmental laws, and they can make a lot more money doing it. And they have the capacity because they have such control of the market. But then we can have them come up and say, look, it's your environmental laws. Yeah, do you want to adopt those environmental laws in Iowa? Look what's happened to California. I think there is some element of that in what they're doing. But they do keep the price of gas and their profits higher in California historically. Mm-hmm. There has never been anything like these margins going back 10, 12, 15 years. I haven't gone back further than that. Mm-hmm. We have never seen margins anywhere near these.
Okay. So as part of your proposed solutions, you one of your proposals is greater oversight from a position that you're calling the gas pricing czar here with subpoena power and the ability to prosecute bad actors. I mean, isn't that the Attorney General?
Attorney General, maybe it takes a long time for them to get a case going. They have subpoena power. The oil refiners don't necessarily have to answer them. This Persian Gulf case is about what happened in the wake of 2015. It's a private case going forward with this information that I will share with the committee. The case that the Attorney General is prosecuting now against one of the big traders in the market is a case from around the same time. So it takes an awful long time for these cases to be found out. They have to get the information, and it often comes in late. I'm talking about someone who in real time their job is to watch this market. If a trader has a report about something wrong, they can contact this person. If there's something that's amiss with the profitability in one period, they can investigate. They can do it in real time. Our legal system works, but it takes a long time to work. And I'm talking about a position where in real time there can be investigations. The CEC isn't equipped to investigate. I don't think it necessarily has the will to investigate, but regardless, it's more of a partner with the oil companies in sharing information and getting things done. We need someone who's basically adversarial with the industry, and a watchdog inside government on the industry.
But as a former member of the Attorney General's office, I know that when you're talking about being more adversarial and being more investigatory, I mean getting information as you indicated is difficult, if not currently impossible, and so that takes subpoena, not only issuing subpoenas but also going to court to try to enforce the subpoenas, to fight against the army of lawyers that the oil companies are going to throw against the Attorney General's office. And so, it just seems to me like rather than reinventing the wheel, that we should try to empower or focus on the Attorney General's office to maybe give them greater resources to be able to take more of that active.
I would suggest maybe someone housed in the Attorney General's office, but who's specific. I mean, the Antitrust Division of the Attorney General's office is doing a lot of cases. They're not just doing gas pricing cases. They're doing a lot of cases, and I think Kathleen Foote's doing a marvelous job. But I think we need maybe resources to specifically watchdog the gas pricing market, and I think housing that person or people as a permanent presence in the Attorney General's office is a good course.
Mm-hmm. And last question that I can think of now is, you were talking about the need to update our antitrust laws, and specifically to stop the sharing of information that you were referring to earlier to basically rig the market. Are there state versus federal jurisdictional issues, or is the state?
I think
does the state have the legal authority to do that on its own?
I think the state has antitrust laws, and it can update its antitrust laws. I believe it could say, there's like in the insurance market, which is strictly regulated by the state, but we have a prohibition on the sharing of pricing manuals. They can't share information about what goes into their prices. They used to. They tried. We revoked that. This would be a similar thing. Why should they be able to know what their competitors are paying for a truckload of gasoline at every gas station in the state? Why should they be able to share that information? I don't think they should. If you put stricter regulations on traders not being able to talk to traders from other companies to share, then you could prosecute them if they did share information rather than having to go after the companies. It's that type of information sharing that concerns me.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Al kind of touched on a lot of, Mr. Marisucci touched on a lot of the questions that I had already. So on this excess profit idea, you mentioned Great Britain was looking at it. Is there a model anywhere else that this is done? And let me, I'm always concerned about price fixing. If you say, well, the excess profit can't be more than 50 cents, isn't there a natural inclination to go all the way up to 50 cents? So you might end up in other times increasing the price of gas.
That's a good question. Great Britain actually passed an excess profit tax, actually in effect, but it is on overall revenue above a certain amount. It doesn't target a margin, and there's all sorts of ways to do that. You could target excess profits above a certain amount rather than do it based on a margin, or you could do, which isn't that different, an update to the price gouging laws that say if a value of gas, if the price of gasoline goes up more than 20% and it's not justified by the cost of that, then they can be prosecuted for price gouging, which is another way to do it. And you just take out the part that in time of a state of emergency has to be declared. I'm just trying to give you some ideas of ways to curb things. I don't have all the answers. There are excess profits taxes around the world on other goods and services, and I'm happy to prepare a little paper for you on how they work. If you want, I can look into it more.
I would be curious. I'm just a little.
I'm kind of curious too.
I'm sort of, I'm kind of in. I'm in the. If you try to mess too much with the free market that there's unintended consequences. So, but obviously we have an issue.
That's presuming the market's free.
And
Really
and fair.
free.
So you have talked about the question really, we wanted to know why gas was so expensive, and your answer really is the consolidation that's happening in California. Are there other areas of the country that you see this type of consolidation, or do we have the consolidation just because we have this high standard that nobody else does?
There are other areas that have consolidated, but what's unique about California, and you might have heard this, is yes, we have this fuel island because of a few factors. One is the CARB fuel, the special fuel. The other thing is we don't have pipes coming into California, only going out. We can't bring gas from other places even if we wanted to. So it is literally a fuel island, and we get our gas when it's made elsewhere, and we get the components of gas via ship coming down the coast, and they actually stop at the refineries, many of the refineries, and so we have this. It's an integrated cartel in many ways. They control the product, they control how much they charge 2/3 of the gas stations for the product. So they're basically setting the street price for the product in 2/3 of the cases, and they also prevent other players from coming in the market. There's some memos that have went around the gas pricing task force that the AG did, and there's more memos showing that they do try to keep players from coming in and building up supply to the point where their profits will be reduced. So I think it's both the factor of the consolidated market and those other uniquely California factors, but the end result is in a state that needs gas as bad as we are. I mean, we're the fifth largest economy in the world. To have 5 refiners making 97% of the gasoline is very dangerous because they can squeeze us when they want to squeeze us, and there isn't much room for competition. And so I don't know how to unring that bell is the problem. If we could unring the bell and create more competition in the market, I would think that would be a better solution than having to take back excess profits after it's charged. But I can't think of how to unring that bell. And that, by the way, this consolidation happened largely in the wake of the Exxon refinery going down. There was some approvals of some mergers that allowed for that consolidation to tighten right in the same period and that's why we had this confluence of forces.
The two areas where you mentioned that we don't have the data is one, what the price is of crude that the refiners paid.
What they pay for the price of crude, the average price they pay for a barrel of crude.
And then it seems the other area that we're lacking current information is the contracts between these no brand stations and the brand stations, what the difference is in what they're paying from the same area. But those are both contracts, right? I mean, that's confidential information.
Well, actually, we do have an idea of what the difference between the branded and unbranded prices are because we can get what is called prices at the rack from Opus and other services. So we actually know on any given day at a given rack, and say in Torrance, the difference between what they're charging the gas station owners for branded and what they're charging the gas station owners for unbranded. And we could pull that tomorrow if it take a little effort, but we can do that. We don't know the price of crude. You're right, because that is a contract. Those are under long-term contracts. They also trade crude oil amongst themselves to make sure they all have crude oil. So we need to know the price, the value of the price of crude oil on an average in a given month that they're running through the refinery, and then the average price of the gasoline that comes out the other end, and then we could do it ourselves, or they can calculate whatever that margin is between it, the gross margin.
Do you said that they're sharing the companies are sharing the price.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, how do you know?
All right. Well, when we were going through the PMAC, we had some people in the industry inform us, and I haven't seen this, that there is a very detailed survey put out by the Lundberg. Lundberg survey you see, you've heard the Lundberg survey. They actually, they put out what the average price of gas in an area is. They get that via a detailed survey of what every gas station owner pays for their gasoline and what they charge for their gasoline. The gas station owners fill it out. They all share it, and the refiners share it. We've tried to get it, and we haven't been able to get it. I think the CEC told me they're not privy to that survey. But that survey, we are told exists, and the refiners all have access to it. So they know, basically, how much everyone's paying for the gas at the gas station and how much they're charging for the gas at every gas station that is a branded contract. I think unbranded stations may participate too. I would urge the committee to investigate the Lundberg survey and find out more about that, because we haven't been able to find out much more than that.
Right. I will be writing that down. And then, what is your opinion about the number of gas stations decreasing in California, and that potentially decreasing competition and increasing price?
I don't see a lack of gas stations as a real issue. I don't see people waiting in line at gas stations. I think this price is really set in the market by the refiner. The unbranded stations, clearly you can get a better deal. I mean, until the change I've seen recently, you could get 30 cents, you could pay 30 cents less, maybe even 40 cents less at an unbranded station. But the problem is the unbranded stations have, the unbranded sector has shriveled over the last 10, 12 years. So there is not an equal sector. And the branded stations have the refiner set price. So I would say if we could encourage unbranded stations, that would have an impact on price. Encouraging branded stations, I don't think has much of an impact on price, because the branded stations traditionally have the higher prices.
Okay. All right. Assemblymember Marisucci.
Thank you very much. I wanted to follow up on the chair's question about, maybe not focusing on the gas stations, but on the state's refining capacity. I mean, given that you're focusing on the top 5 oil refiners controlling 96% of gasoline in California, going back to what I was trying to explore earlier with the oil industry representative, I mean, if California starts to see a reduction in the demand for gasoline, what, if any, implications do you see in terms of the oil refining capacity in the state of California? Is it going to further concentrate the percentage of gasoline being refined by a fewer number of refineries? Do you have any projections in terms of where we might be headed?
I would say that the refiners keep us running, pretty close on inventory on inventory to empty. Like I think 10 days supply or something like that at any given time. They have the capacity to ramp up supply. They can ramp up supply in their refineries in Washington State. It was previously mentioned. If need be, they can ramp up supply in they can turn a refinery around in lots of different places and make gasoline for California. It just takes a turnaround time and enough of a market to bring the gas to market. So I don't see that as a real issue. I think that the refiners will keep us running on inventories that are just right so they can hit the price point that they want. And for them, it's really about making sure that we have just enough so that if something goes wrong, there's a refinery outage, that causes a speculative concern about the supply, which drives up the price. And they're making the gas at the same costs, and they get to charge more for it. So that's why the system's always been, has for the last 10, 15 years, or as long as I've been looking at it, has been running on almost just-in-time inventories with just a little bit more. I'd say 10 days or something, and that is a problem. That's why the idea of the strategic carb reserve, for want of a better word, came out. It just was rather impractical to accomplish. But I think that the refiners have a great market here, and they will keep serving demand as long as we have it for them. And I don't think we have to worry about their capacity to meet it. We have to worry about a little bit the opposite thing. Like I worry that the Marathon refinery going offline and the Phillips refinery going offline are going to short the market. It's great that they're making for biodiesel, but we have a real need for carb fuel. So I worry more about the opposite. And we have seen refineries go offline. We've seen memos. There's an infamous memo of Exxon and another company working to keep a refiner from opening a refinery by advocating higher environmental quality standards so that they couldn't meet them to open the refinery. There is a long documented evidence about refiners working to keep the market from having more players. And I don't think we're going to change that, unfortunately, which is why I think the best we can do is police that.
Yeah, no, actually, I share your concern about the Marathon and Phillips 66 being perhaps an indication of a trend of fewer refiners consolidating a greater control over the gasoline refining market.
All it takes is an accident, like the Exxon refinery at one big refinery, and we're back to where we don't want to be again. So that's why I see consolidation as the problem, because as long as I've been studying this, it's one permutation or another. They always find a way to make the money. If it's the branded, unbranded deal, if it's they kept supply out in the wake of Torrance for a long time. There was an LA Times article about this mystery Exxon ship floating out with carb fuel in it. I forget where it was, like in Indonesia, and they didn't bring it in. And we basically did track ship logs of the fact that there was a shipment of carb fuel and never came to California. And I mean, there's all sorts of ways, but the problem is I don't have the ability to police this industry. And what I'm saying is we need someone in the Attorney General office in real time whose job it is to police the industry in that way. Like if we're short on supply, someone should be asking, what are we going to do to get supply in? Now the CEC may ask that question, but they don't ask it the same way the Attorney General asks it. And we need someone, who's going to go public and do things to make sure that the refiners know they have the obligation to bring supply in when a refinery's down.
All right, thank you.
We really appreciate your time today, Mr.
Well, thank you
Warren.
for looking into this. I'm glad you're delving. I think so.
Right. I don't know if we have any general comments, but nope. Okay. So why don't we move to our last item, public comment. Do we have any speakers that are here that would like to comment today? This is your opportunity. All right. Well, thank you again to all our speakers. Really appreciate, I'll say it again, your patience with appropriations taking such a long time. And I want to thank all our staff for helping to put this hearing together. And if there's no further comments, we will adjourn this meeting.